Good morning. It is May 23rd, 2025, and this is the OSU Turfgrass Team Times. I think everybody has put their scuba gear away. We've had enough rain, I think, for quite a while. The problems that will arise with that, of course, are that soils are now absolutely saturated, and working them is going to be somewhat problematic. So a little bit of patience is required. For those of you on the golf courses, of course, those sand-based root zones on your greens are probably jumping out of the ground. And because temperatures were warmer, grass is still growing. Now, I can tell you the northern part of the state, while we didn't have a frost this morning, it was pretty darn close to it. So there's probably been a little bit of a stunting of progress. Online today, we got Dr. David Gardner, we got Dr. Tyler Carr, we got Dr. Dave Shetlar, Dr. Xiaowei Wu, and the inimitable Todd Hicks, who is in Hawaii, not in those warm temperatures. Dr. Gardner, give us a weed update.
Good morning, everybody. So we're kind of on the tail end of dealing with winter annual broadleaf weeds, and because of the drought that we had last year, we had quite the population of these. Hopefully you were able to control these fairly well. Personally, in my work out at our research center, I found control in my funded trials to be quite difficult with these because usually these are most active in temperatures that are below that which our herbicides are commonly effective. And so I would say use this year to try to build back up your turfgrass density, although with all of the rain that Ed was just talking about, that seems to be kind of taking care of itself. But if you do have bare areas this summer and fall, consider putting out a pre-emergence herbicide in areas where you had difficulty with any of these weeds. And also I would point out that next year, perhaps a herbicide to try in the early spring is Florazilam, marketed as Defender because it is active on all of these weeds. And it's also quite effective in the cooler temperatures that our other broadleaf herbicides sometimes struggle in. There's quite a few new combination herbicides that are on the market. And one of the trends is for these products to be four-way herbicides that include a protox inhibitor, carfentrazone, sulfentrazone, pyrifluoroethyl, flumioxazin. The protox inhibitors are pretty phytotoxic to turfgrass. They're quite active herbicides, but one of the reasons that they're in the formulations at the relatively low rate is because of their potential for turfgrass injury. And this spring, I've had quite a few reports from people sending me pictures that look like this of grass blades a couple of days after application using one of these products. And just a reminder that when we have weather conditions where it's warm in the daytime, relatively cooler at night, we had that earlier in the month, and the grass is otherwise fairly quickly growing, any of those protox inhibiting herbicides or products that contain those can cause this type of damage. That's one of the reasons on those herbicide labels they recommend not adding a surfactant because that will exacerbate this injury. However, this usually goes away after a couple of mowings, and it's, for the most part, temporary. This is fun. This is a newer weed for us in lawns. This has long been a problem everywhere but managed turf, but poison hemlock. Not only am I seeing it at the OTF center, but I'm also getting pictures of it sent to me by people where this is surviving repeated mowing. So while wearing gloves, you can verify that it's poison hemlock. You see the foliage, it's in the carrot family, and that tends to have that bipinnately compound foliage. Makes it fairly easy to recognize, but if you look at the stem, it's smooth. In other words, there's no hairs, and also there are purple spots. If that's the case, any post-selective herbicide with 2,4-D should be fairly active against it. You can also use glyphosate if you want to get it out of there. If you are going to attempt to remove it mechanically, do be wearing gloves and wash your hands thoroughly after the operation. It's not called poison hemlock just for nothing. The Buckeye Environmental Horticulture team actually has some excellent articles about this that I would refer you to for a better treatment of that subject. We were talking about the weather conditions, and I always like to throw this picture in when I can get away with it, even though not only am I not a plant pathologist, but our very own Todd Hicks is on the call today. But yeah, there is red thread everywhere, and there are a couple of ramifications for my showing this. One is, because we've had all of the rain, a lot of the urea-based fertilizers that we've used are, being leached away a little bit more quickly, and so the turf is a little bit thinner. And my point is that when you see this, it's the turf sign. It's one of the ways that it's saying I could use a little bit of nitrogen. But the other reason that I wanted to point this out is that because of all of the rainfall that we've had, that can exacerbate the conditions whereby our pre-emergence herbicides that we use to control crabgrass and goosegrass might dissipate a little bit quicker than we would like them to. So crabgrass is about 2 to 4 leaf in turf right now. Goosegrass is a little bit behind that. But just go out, monitor. If you see conditions like this, or the weeds in this stage now, you could control them with drive and a combination, or quinclorac, sorry, and a combination of a pre-emergence herbicide, or you could just wait for these to become a little bit more visible in the turf and treat them post-emergence in June. Anybody that used this new Strikor herbicide, Pathoxamid, I want to be excited about this. This is our first new active ingredient for crabgrass and goosegrass control introduced to our market since 1994. The reviews on this are a little bit mixed so far. It's much more active against goosegrass and annual bluegrass. But if you did use this, I know that I've talked to some superintendents and they said that this is actually being pushed pretty hard in the market. Go out and check and see how effective it is being for you. And again, just be ready for any post-emergence treatments that you might need to follow up with. And then finally, I wanted to point out that it is that time of the year, so I am getting emails with pictures of this guy. So this isn't really a weed in turf so much as it is in the landscaping beds around turf, but this is broadleaf helleborine, which is an invasive orchid. It's a weedy terrestrial orchid that you can occasionally see it in turf grass, but for the most part, it doesn't survive repeated mowing. To try to control it, remember it's a monocot, even though it's got the broader leaves. So broadleaf herbicides are not going to work for the most part. Sulfentrazone or glyphosate are going to be the best way to deal with that particular species. And that's what I have for today.
Tyler?
Hey, Dr. Gardner, I was out visiting some athletic fields over the last week, and a lot of high school baseball and softball fields are ending their season, and they may not have much play on them. Some of them may not have much play over the summer. Can they apply pre-emergence herbicides to their infield dirt areas to kind of prevent weeds from coming in? And what would you recommend there?
I don't see any reason why they couldn't. Check the label to make sure that there aren't any restrictions, but the same products that you would apply to turf, you should be able to do that. And if anything, they would persist for a longer period of time because you would have less of the organic matter, obviously, which is kind of one of the main detriments to long-term effectiveness of pre-emergence herbicides.
Okay, thank you.
Oh boy, Dr. Shetlar.
Dave, I hate to admit it, but I've been watching TV as a retiree here, and I'm seeing all the time this product called Spruce
Yes.
being recommended as safe to pets and people and all the rest of it. And they show these people, sort of dancing around the landscape using and spraying this stuff. And when I looked at the label, I said, I'm going, wait a minute, this is a quote replacement for glyphosate. It's a general, it not only kills the weeds, but kills the grass.
That's correct.
And I just thought maybe we ought to make a statement on that when in case some of our lawn care and landscape viewers get questions by homeowners about it.
Well, so spruce is a combination of ingredients that you find on that 25B list of or quote unquote organic products. The characteristics of it, as you point out, it is non-selective. It's also contact, though. So while it will damage the grass a lot, the turf will begin to grow back in about 3 weeks. That said, I don't recommend making applications of it to turf unless your eventual goal is to get rid of that turf grass stand. But it's basically what you're seeing here is that it's an iteration of the organic contact non-selective herbicides that we've had in the marketplace for, at least the last 30 years. The difference is that this is a very large company with a substantial advertising budget that is bringing the product forward. It works well, but just recognize that since it's a contact product, that means that if you apply it to a perennial weed, it's going to suppress it for about 3 weeks, followed by rebound and recovery. And also, since it's non-selective, as you say, you have to be pretty careful with it around turfgrass, and don't apply it to turf unless your goal is to get rid of the turf eventually.
Two comments, Dave. I'm assuming that spruce smells nice. Is that the
Oh,
way I
yeah.
would take it?
Oh, yeah.
And
It
the
does.
second thing is those wild orchids, they'll grow in lawns, Dave, and I personally know because it's a pain in my butt. They keep popping up in the lawn, and it's quite aggressive once they start to spread in it. And of course, you can't pull it because the rhizomes are so deep down in there that they'll snap off at the soil interface.
Is it
So
kind of like Canada thistle, where every time you pull one, then you end up with two?
I wish my head on the hair on my head was like that, but yeah, that is kind of what it is. You end up with more than what you wanted. So it probably is going to be a herbicide requirement. Now, the other follow-up question, Dr. Gardner, is glyphosate. So where is this for homeowners as far as availability? Because I did see it in a big box store recently.
Any glyphosate that's available to homeowners now is probably big box stores that are attempting to use up their stock that they had before it became not a product to be sold to homeowners anymore. So that was the elegant solution to the problem of all of the lawsuits, was to discontinue access to homeowners, because they're like 98% of all of the lawsuits. It's still available in the professional market. But that is something you do want to read the label. If you like glyphosate, as Dr. Nangle points out, it is occasionally still available, but be aware that the glyphosate replacement products tend to have active ingredients in them that you have to be a little bit more aware of how you're using that product. One of the neat things about glyphosate is that anything that didn't come into contact with the plant, once it hit the soil, it was bound to the organic matter and basically almost immediately, I don't want to say neutralized, but it became, biologically not active anymore. Whereas the replacement herbicides can have the undesirable property of, like a 6-week residual, depending on what your use rate is. And so, for example, if you were going to use one of the glyphosate replacement products and take out some turf, if you look at the labels of the products that were originally marketed with those active ingredients, they said don't reseed in those areas for up to 6 weeks. Now, one of those products that's on the market now for homeowners is claiming that you can reseed within 7 days. I'm going to admit I've not done the work to see whether or not they're right or not, but it is a pretty respectable company. I'm assuming that they have the data to back that up. But that is kind of a confusing thing, that, the original products have a, do not reseed for X number of days, and it's a much longer window than what the homeowner product is saying.
Wow, 2 days, 7 days will be impressive.
7 days would be impressive. Yeah.
Speaking of labels, just before we talk to Mr. Hicks, one thing I did also notice lately was somebody is selling grass seed, and they've named it with the common name Italian ryegrass. Now, there is a fundamental problem with that, folks, for all you looking at grass seed. Italian ryegrass does not have connotations of Leonardo da Vinci and beautiful historical Leaning Tower of Pizza. It is annual ryegrass, also known by its Latin binomial as Lolium multiflorum. Be careful with that. I do not like the idea of somebody rebranding something as Italian ryegrass, which will be commonly named so in Europe, and I think in the agricultural world here as well. But for us, Italian ryegrass, it ain't great, Clark. So if you see it on a label, I would think about alternating away from that bag of seed. Todd Hicks.
Good morning, Ed. Thanks. I would agree. I've heard from several lawn care companies talking about the fact that they're actually looking at using some Italian ryegrass because homeowners are complaining they're not seeing anything turn green in 24 hours, which, as we know, this stuff will come up very fast, but it's not going to be there next year, right? So I think we're in a quandary right now. People have lost patience where they call it the Amazon patience. You want it tomorrow, like Amazon gets it. So they're experimenting and experimenting and seeding a lot of this stuff this year just to give homeowners something to quit worrying about their lawn about when they do get it seeded. So on the disease front, things have been quiet up till probably 2 or 3 days ago. And as Dr. Gardner posted that photo, red threads fired up pretty much all over the state of Ohio. If you've got susceptible grass, which ryegrass is probably the most receptive to it, I've seen a lot of fine fescue hit with it pretty hard. Or you've seen it on your lawns or areas you take care of before, you're probably likely to see it in the next 7 to 10 days. If you haven't treated already for it, don't try treating it once you see it because our fungicides, for the most part, are protectants. In other words, they need to be on before the disease starts. So you're just going to waste your money thinking you're going to get rid of the disease after the fact, putting a fungicide down. Disease-wise, there's not much else going on in high cut. There's a little bit of leaf spot going on, but my feeling is, as everybody's talked about, turf is just blowing out of the ground. I think the lesions and the damage is growing up and being mowed off as quick as it can appear. So right now, that's not a real big issue, and people aren't noticing it. I think they will notice it here in a month or so when our growth stops or slows down severely, and then you're going to see discoloration and maybe some of that telltale pattern of your canopy thinning away or melting out, as we used to call it, and leaf spot will grab hold. We've just been too wet for us not to have leaf spot active. So if we continue to be wet, look out on high cut turf that's going to appear. The other problems with high cut turf I'm seeing right now or hearing from is dealing with seeding. Most of the companies have not got their seeding jobs done because of the wet weather, and it's going to take a bit to dry out before they can start to seed and move dirt and process areas. So we're looking at June time periods to seed. That's normally not that big a deal, but we don't know what the weather is going to be here in Ohio. It could be like July or August, or it could be a normal June. I don't know, but just in case it's going to be a hot weather period where we get storms and or humidity blowing up, Pythium is a real threat. And remember, Pythium is a disease that kills. It's not aesthetic. Stuff doesn't come back from it. So if you've got new seedlings out in June, I would suggest putting on a Pythium preventative product. Just it's not that expensive. It lets you sleep at night. One less thing you got to worry about, because if Pythium does show up, it absolutely loves to eat new seedlings, and it's a killer. So now you're going to have to spend more money and more time redoing that area again. On the higher maintenance side of things, golf side of things, been fairly quiet disease-wise. I've got some samples of odd turf growth. Most of that's due to environmental conditions. Wet weather, overcast weather causes some turf to do some wild things when it's growing. The other thing, I've seen a few samples of leaf spot come in. Those are usually on courses that are getting hit heavier and heavier with water, and so they're not being able to keep up with their spray regime, and that seems to be the number one complaint besides mowing on golf courses right now. So my note to the golf courses right now is, if you're weak or behind, get back ahead on leaf spot number one. The second thing I'd be treating for is dollar spot, where we're going into these mid 70s and reaching into 80 degrees in the next 10 days and warmer nights. I think we are set to explode leaf spot and dollar spot wise, especially if you're weak or behind. The other thing I'm noticing on samples is, and I warned people this last year, we did not have a recovery period last fall. We basically grew turf and put up with horrible weather, and then it went to bed for winter. We woke up with short root systems, and everybody's looking at all the turf growing and going, it's great, it's wonderful. But you're not looking at your roots. Take a look at your roots. Most of the golf course roots I'm looking at are 2 inches and under already. We only got a couple more weeks, folks, of growing roots and making turf healthy before we get into the quote unquote survival period, where what you got is what you got till about September 1st, right? So my note to that is take a look at those roots, and if you haven't started your phosphite program, get on your horse and put out those phosphites. They're pennies on the dollars for applications. They enhance turf health and they enhance your fungicide program. So that's all I got for now, Ed.
Thanks, Todd. Hey, one follow-up. Would you have any potential current concerns about things like algae showing up in the next week after all the moisture?
It's not warm enough for it, but it could, algae could show up. So algae is one of those things that, just like all the rest of the diseases I warn about, when it's in its infancy stage, that's when you hit it hard. Don't mess around with half rates or chemicals that kind of work. Find the best product for the job and whack it hard. Also, if you're fighting algae, one of the best things you can do is some kind of timing just to open that soil up so that you get some drainage and or drying down below the surface. And you're physically interrupting algae and or moss does wonders for cultural controls.
Good, Todd. Dr. Carr.
Thank you, Dr. Nangle. So kind of piggybacking off some things that everyone else has talked about. Um, with us having plenty of moisture recently, a lot of us really haven't thought much about irrigation, and but we're not far from the summer when things are gonna possibly get hotter and drier. If you haven't started your wetting agent program, now's the time to do so. Wetting agents are much more effective if applied in a preventative way. Another thing that we're seeing, and I mean, in Columbus, it was 53 degrees. That was the high yesterday. Temperatures have been a little bit lower. Growth potential has been a little bit lower over the next week. Some of the state may not get out of the 70s or out of the 60s. I know a lot of you have begun PGR programs, and just want to exercise a word of caution. If with these lower temperatures that we've had, that PGR is metabolizing much slower, and so if you apply a PGR at a frequency that or if you're on a PGR program and you're applying at a certain frequency, that may reduce your growth more than you're expecting, given that these temperatures have been a little bit lower. There could be some more PGR kind of in the plant that would need to be metabolized out. So if you make an application, you may get a little more regulation, and that could impact our ability to grow out of some of this traffic that we're getting with high play. So just be cognizant of your PGR applications. I'm not saying don't make them, but you may want to evaluate your current growth situation. And then I wanted to point out some events that we have coming up. We have a full calendar of events over the next, uh, through the end of the year, really. So just want to point out, not necessarily events that we're all putting on, but events that, we will have activity at, or you can see us at, or events that ultimately end up benefiting some of the students that are in our program. So the Glenn B. Hudson Scholarship Outing, that's going to be in Columbus in a couple weeks. The Sports Field Management Association group is having a summer field day and equipment expo at the end of June. So that's not just for sports field managers, that's for anyone, golf course superintendents, those involved in lawn care. Companies are going to bring equipment out and you'll be able to see those operate. That'll be at the Columbus Crew Training Facility over at historic Crew Stadium. Turfgrass Field Day is in Columbus, August 5th. The Olka Field Day is the day after, August 6th. Golf outing for OTF at Terrace Park Country Club in late August. OSFMA has a fall field day at ATI in September. ATI Scholarship Golf Outing is late September, and then the conference and show for OTF, that's December 9th through 11th. Not all of these are on the Buckeye Turf site, but once we get links for them, we'll put them all on our turf site, so you don't have to go to all these different chapter or organization websites to find them. You can find them all at this link that's below. So lots of different programming, lots of different opportunities to be involved and interact with us and contribute to funds for scholarships that support our programs that keep growing. So that's what I have. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. Dr. Wu.
Morning, everyone. It's good to share some of the update news. First, on annual progress waiver. For those of you working on golf courses, you might be aware that the damage start to appear. Let me share the screen. So this was taken late last week when I was in the field. You can see that the grass started yellow, especially buffer areas between the plots. And yesterday when I went to the field, the symptoms become more obvious. So that they are definitely progressing. If you have not applied a larvicide yet, I would encourage you to do so. As said, the insecticides targeting the adult stage is not reliable as those targeting the larval stage because it's the larvae that actually cause the damage. If you have not applied larvicide yet, and you don't know you actually have that problem. So one thing you can do is that you can do scouting of your populations. What you can do is that you mix 3 ounces of table salt with 2 pints of warm water, not hot, just warm, and stir. And take a plug, if it's a standard plug, if you can tear them into 4 quarters. The plug is about 2 to 3 inch depth, and you tear them to the 4 quarters. But if you're using a standard cup cutter, you can tear them into 8 parts. Anyway, you can submerge those pieces into the salt water and stir every 15 minutes, and those left stages, they should be able to be irritated to the surface. They will float to the surface, and you can actually see the movement. That you can get that work done in about an hour. So that can give you an idea about what stages they are and what's the densities you have. Usually, the healthy turf can tolerate about 30 to 50 larvae, ABW larvae per square foot. If you have more, you may want to trade. And also, the compromised turf conditions can tolerate less later in the season. So you want to keep an eye on that and apply late larvicide as needed. So I expect the damage to become worse in the next 1 or 2 weeks. Just keep an eye on that and take actions as needed. Another thing I want to mention is about thatch. I would say many of us know that thatch is actually the dead grass materials from the clippings and stems and dead roots accumulated year after year. They're sitting in the ground. You may not notice, but they can actually affect the pest and disease occurrence. We know that white crops, they like thatch, they like feeding on the thatch, feed on the organic matter. And also if the thatch is too deep, and that can cause a barrier of the water movement into the soil profile. So that means that your grass roots can easily get more dry, and also because the water cannot pass through, that means the pesticides cannot pass through either. So that will affect the pest disease occurrence, especially when you have water sitting on the ground, and that encourages the disease occurrence. So this is especially important in the summertime when we have rainfalls and also sometimes have drought stress like what we experienced last year. So usually the thumb rule we use is if you have more than ½ inch of thatch, you may want to do dethatching or aerification. This is usually done in the spring and fall for the cool season grass when the grass is actively growing. If you have not done that yet, I would say it's a very important practice to reduce the pest and disease pressure, and also to improve the pesticide efficacies. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. Now, I did ask Dr. Shetlar if he had anything to contribute today, but all he said he wanted to do was sit there and look pretty. So thank you, Dr. Shetlar. You did have some very pertinent questions, however. Is there anything you want to add or that we've missed, Dr. Shetlar, in this instance?
Yeah, this is the time that, especially in the lawn care, that they're thinking about insect control. My feeling is you've missed the bill bugs. Those probably should have been treated about 2 weeks ago, at least as a preventive. You might be able to get a curative, but I think the reality is most lawn care folks are more worried about white grubs. And again, if you're going to be using imidacloprid or merit-like products, we're now recommending that those don't go down until mid-June to late June through July. And you need to make sure that you're using the highest amount, which is not 3/10 of a pound, but 4/10 of a pound of active ingredient. And I'll have to back up Dr. Wu's statement on the thatch. I find it kind of interesting. We had a lot of research and a lot of news about thatch in the late 1980s and 1990s, and everybody was reducing their fertilizer rates and doing a lot of spring core aerification and fall core aerification to do thatch management. But that collective knowledge seems to be waning now, and especially in the lawn care industry. And I'm seeing a lot of the lawn care folks going back up to that 4.5 to 5 pounds of nitrogen per year on their turf. And many of the lawns in my neighborhood are thatched out. I can go into some of those lawns and there's 1 inch to 1.5 inches of thatch. And you're wasting your money if you're trying to put down a grub control in that. Because 99% of it's going to be caught in the first 1/2 inch of that thatch and not get down to the soil thatch interface where the grubs are feeding and where it needs to be in order to be active against those grubs. So again, if you're having problems with your grub control, pull some cores out of that turf and see what your thatch levels are. And it may be that you need to be thinking more about dethatching than the grub control. And once you get the thatch down to that 1/2 inch or less, it's kind of magic. Your grub controls all of a sudden start to work again. And so that's just my statement for the lawn care folks. Ed?
Thank you, Dr. Shetlar. Dr. Carr.
So I do want to add, I 100% agree with this. When it comes to thatch removal, I think it's important for us to state that verticutting or vertical mowing, dethatching is much more effective than core aeration at removing thatch. The nitrogen piece is really important too. People are over fertilizing, contributing to more growth, more thatch. I think there's this common misconception that clippings increase thatch. Bagging your clippings will not reduce the amount of thatch that you have. So if that is your reason for bagging clippings, you shouldn't be doing that. And yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions out there, but also just because you dethatch doesn't mean you need to apply more fertilizer to recover from it too, because so it's like a slippery slope. And so that's just some words of caution out there on it. Very important, but it just has to be done diligently.
That is a good point. And for the follow-up on the clippings thing, the rate of degradation of the clippings means that they do not contribute. And that's why Dr. Carr is making that point. Dr. Shetlar, you had aimed not to contribute, but you then completely took over. Well done. With that, we will leave you for another week. I'm sure people are like, can you please stop talking? A couple of things to keep note. We are going to weekly recording starting from next week as we kind of get into the 100 days, that famous battle of survival. For those of you who are erstwhile mowers and you love to mow once, twice, 3 times a week on your home lawn, stop. As the temperatures start to increase, your grass is going to slow down. The less you mow it, the better it's actually going to look. So I know that 30 minutes of peace and quiet does make a difference for some of you, but at the same time, you're going to cause more problems as this continues to develop. But as growth is going and jumping out of the ground, that will continue. Dr. Carr, do you want to put up our links? Thank you. All right, so any of the email questions, socials, things like that, all available there, and the buckeye.turf.osu.edu website. Again, to make mention, folks, any chemicals mentioned, if you've never used them before, you have questions, please reach out to us with those questions prior to purchase or using them, because there may be liability or safety concerns that you are not thinking about. Thank you, and we will talk to you all next week.